What's up, guys? So in my last video, gay dating in Tel Aviv, Israel, I mentioned how meeting guys here has been very easy. I find that gay dating here is very accessible. Like, guys are just accessible and easy to talk to and actually to facilitate meeting in person. So this is actually the city out of this whole trip. If you've been keeping up with my videos, this is where I've met the most men in real life, which has been great. But there is one date that stuck out like a sore thumb, and I wanted to tell you guys about this story. So I met him on Tinder. He was handsome, we started talking, and he was super respectful, inquisitive, asking me things about myself, and he was very proactive. He was down to meet the same night that we started talking. Like, we kept going back and forth, and he said, you know what, let's just meet tonight for drinks. It's so much better to talk in person. And I was very charmed by that because I'm not used to guys being so proactive, especially on apps. I find that, especially an app like Tinder, typically it's a lot of back and forth, and then sometimes you talk for like a week or two and you never even end up meeting up, and it's just a waste of time. So I was very impressed that he was quick to be like, let's just meet. So that night we meet for drinks, and I have to say, in person, he was fine, you know, good looking in pictures, but in person I was like, oh, he's really hot. So, you know, we started talking, and he would cut me off here and there. But I used to work for an Israeli company at one point, and a lot of the Israelis at that company were the same way. They were kind of like abrupt and harsh, and they kind of just like get to the point and they would cut you off. So I thought, this must be cultural. I don't think this is him being like an asshole, right? So the date, you know, kept going, and he talked a lot about how he hates labels and he just wants to meet people, but he dates women and men and it's not a big deal to him, and, you know, he's very open-minded and all this stuff. And of course that's nice to hear. You know, it's nice to hear that somebody is exploring as just a human being. They're exploring their sexuality, they're exploring life, and they don't want to follow all these rules and stuff like that. I thought that was cool. But here and there he would throw in these random remarks that would throw me off. Like, he mentioned how I had said, oh, we should meet at a gay bar because, you know, I'm here visiting, like, it would be cool to check out the gay bars. He told me that that had rubbed him the wrong way and that he considered not meeting with me at all after I said that, because he just assumed that meant I was into the gay scene because I wanted to go to a gay bar. And I was like, I mean, I'm a gay person visiting, wanting to check out what, you know, gay men are like here, and gay dating is like. Going to a bar is just a bar for me, you know, like, it's just, I want to go out, but I would prefer to be at a gay bar than a straight bar because I want to, you know, potentially meet people who could be friends, who could, you know, maybe there could be like a romantic interest. I'm here visiting, you know. And as I was explaining this to him, I kind of felt like I was having to defend myself, which is totally demonstrative of how the rest of the date went. Like, most of the time we were having fine conversation, but then he would say these things that were kind of like, they felt like jabs. Another random example is, you know, I asked him what his first impression of me was when he met me in person, like compared to the profile. And I guess when you ask that, you're kind of asking for potentially a blunt response, but he said, well, you just kind of seem like a geek, like an IT geek. Is that your background? Like, are you into computer science? And it threw me off because, at least in America, when you call somebody a geek is an insult. Like, a geek is not really complimentary. I feel like if I thought that somebody seemed like a geek and they were asking me for my first impression, I would probably say, oh, well, you seem like somebody who maybe has like a tech background. Like, you seem smart and analytical. I would probably reorient it to not seem as judgmental. But I started realizing that he had no qualms about coming off basically tactless. And in isolated cases, these things didn't seem like that big of a deal. Just kind of like, you know, things that irked me, but I just went along with the program. But in larger concentrations, as the date kept going, I was like, wow, this guy is super judgmental. And I finally called him out on it at one point. I said, you know, you mentioned how you don't like labels and you don't like to be put in a box, but I've noticed that you very much like to label and categorize other things, like me so far, and, you know, you said this stuff about the gay bars, and he said other stuff, and I'm just giving a few examples. And from there, it just kind of kept getting worse. I think he became aware that he was coming off super hypocritical and that what he was saying didn't actually match up with what he really believed. But he did admit to me that he was very insecure and that he was very judgmental, but it's because he's judgmental of himself. And when he said that, I sympathized. I was like, okay, I can get that, and whatever. So all these random things would happen, and then they would kind of disappear, and we would talk about something else and change the subject. But then there was the one juggernaut that was unavoidable, that became a big topic, and that was his age. I don't remember exactly how it came up. I think he asked me what age range I said I was looking for on Tinder, and I told him. And I guess that made him feel comfortable to tell me that he had lied about his age on Tinder, and that was a huge turnoff for me. A, because nobody wants to be lied to, and B, I also think with these apps, it's so easy to manipulate information, and people catfish all the time. So I feel like when you make yourself vulnerable on an app like this, and the other party refuses to and decides to switch details and lie and whatever, I just think there's something about that that's not only fraudulent, but it's like poor character, it's in poor taste. I kept trying to then figure out what his age was, and he wouldn't tell me. And he was even denying that he had lied. He was like, well, it's just this random profile. I mean, you match with people all the time, people can say anything they want. I didn't really lie, I just, changed the information. And in my mind, I'm like, does he really think I'm gonna fall for this nonsense? That he thinks having an age that's different from his age and presenting himself that way, that's not a lie? And as I kept kind of probing to figure out what his real age was, because he refused to tell me, he quickly flipped it around and made me, the weird one in this situation by saying, why are you making this into a big deal? Like, my age shouldn't matter because my real age is still in the age range that you were interested in, and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I don't even care about your age. It's just about the authenticity. And I mentioned, at the beginning of this date, you told me how important being authentic was to you. So it's just weird to me that in presenting yourself to potential partners, friends, dates, whatever, you are refusing to be transparent about that. So I thought I was being very logical and sane and I was trying to explain to him why he shouldn't do that and why that's not cool. And he flipped it around and found a way for me to be the weird guy who's now obsessing about his age. And then he randomly jumped to something else, critiquing me, saying, well, I think what's a bigger deal than age is the fact that you told your friend that you were meeting with me, and, that's not cool, like, maybe I don't want people to know about me being on an app like this, and blah, 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 blah. And in that moment, I realized what he was doing, and that's gaslighting. He was gaslighting me. He felt cornered, and he didn't like that kind of pressure or shame or whatever. And instead of being accountable like an adult, he flipped it so that I now feel shame and the attention, the spotlight is on me. And I was aware of it in the moment, and I called him out on it. And I said, what you're doing is called gaslighting, and it's not cool. You're taking the pressure off you because you feel uncomfortable, and now you're putting it on me. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, why didn't you just get up and leave? Like, clearly this was an uncomfortable date. This guy was just a jerk. I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I think either it's me or it's cultural or like the way that I was raised. I try to fix things. Like, I don't want to leave a situation with bad blood. I don't like to go home with hard feelings towards somebody. I also don't like to cause a scene and, be dramatic and, make an abrupt exit. So I really was trying to just like smooth things out. And the other thing is, to be honest, a significant portion of the date, I would say, I guess the majority of it, was fine. Like, a majority of it was just us talking about different things, but there were these random moments puncturing that were uncomfortable and I thought very rude. And in analyzing all of this, I now realize this is the profile of an abusive person. Like, this is it in a nutshell. Sometimes in the moment, you're not completely able to process everything as it's happening. Like, we were also drinking. It was late at night. And I knew that I didn't like the way this guy was making me feel, and I didn't like how openly critical he was, not just towards like everybody, but towards me. But honestly, most of the date was fine. It was just these random moments that, as the date kept going, there were more and more of those unpleasant moments. I think we always assume things like abuse are black and white, but it's murky. It'll be fine for a while, and then something will happen that just feels strange and out of character, and that's exactly what this guy was like. He would say things but then I would realize there were holes in what he was saying and it didn't actually match other things he would say. The conversation just, it was us both, I think, trying really hard to get out of the awkwardness and just have a good casual time. But we both clearly knew we were never going to see each other again because we both had like annoyed each other essentially. My takeaway from this, there's a few takeaways. The first thing is I realized I need to work on not always trying to fix things, because in the end, what's the point? I knew even in the moment, like, I don't want to spend more time with him on a separate occasion while I'm here. Like, I want to enjoy my time here. I don't want negative energy. I don't want somebody who's super judgmental, somebody who's like, you know, mind fucking me. But yet there was this instinct to like make sure it was smoothed out before we parted ways so that I could feel good about it. And I now realize, like, who cares? The other takeaway, I think, is to be aware of people like this, and that when the energy doesn't feel right and something just at your core feels uncomfortable, you need to pay attention to that instinct. Something too that I've been thinking about the past few years is that it's more important to pay attention to what somebody does than what they say. Because when I look back, he said a lot of things that made him look like this really sweet, thoughtful person, but then other things he would say didn't match up with that at all, like certain judgments he would make. It's weird because when I think about it, you know, I've had dates that weren't perfect or where I knew I wasn't going to see the person again, but I've never gone on a date with a guy who was like a jerk, like a legitimate, like, self-absorbed jerk. That's my story about this date. Luckily, it didn't totally put a damper on my time here because I've met other guys who were fine and nice and all of that, but definitely a disappointment. Let me know if something like this has ever happened to you guys.